once I have these established, you basically have the majority of your face established, you know? Like using these like lines that we drew earlier will actually kind of like help if you're doing shadows later. Um, which will be really good because when you use shadows, you can actually like really bring out the figure. But continuing about, we'll talk about shadows a little bit later. When continuing with the rest of the skull, essentially, what you want to do is, I like to go up a little bit above the eyebrows, make this little slanted line, and then I'll draw these lines up. And then essentially what I'm doing right now is gesturing out the hairline and the skull. So, you know, if you keep going like this is essentially where the skull is. It's round. But when you put in the hairline, you actually kind of help yourself figure out like how is the hair gonna fall, like what's it gonna look like. Basically, for the hair, what you can do is you want to figure out where the part of the hair is gonna be. Like for instance, like say the hair parts this way, then you want to draw the rest of the hair strands in clumps. Like you want to group them together basically. So for this example, I'm going to have her hair going behind her ear. And it's going to part from over here. This is where the hair is parting. And I'm like, man, I'm not like really that familiar with this hairstyle. If you clump things together and group like the hair follicles together, it'll be easier for you to understand where things are going to go. So if something doesn't look right, it'll kind of show its head a little bit sooner than later. And what you can do, like having the straight hairline, you can even have it to where you kind of like curve things a little bit to kind of give it like that illusion, like the hair is like going a direction. Oh, that wasn't right. And then here's like the hair coming from like the seam of it. And then this just gives the illusion like, you know, it's coming from somewhere, essentially. And let's just continue drawing some of this in clumps. And since it's tucked behind her hair, what I like to do is have like a little bit in front and then a little bit behind like this. And then you can draw her sideburns in as well. And since it's going to be a her, I guess I just decided that, but let me clean this up a little bit. I feel like right now she looks like she has like crow feet. So I'm going to kind of clean that up a little bit. And I'll go back in. I'll draw in the rest of her hair, just kind of clumped together. Kind of like that. And if you want to get fancy, you can even have like hair follicles kind of like fall down. You know, like once you have the established shapes, you can go in and I feel like adding like these little tiny like tidbits of hair gives it some personality to it. I'm gonna like say like put like a bun behind her hair. I don't really know how that's gonna look, so I'm gonna make this like just the general shape of how I think it's gonna look. And I know the objects behind her neck. You won't be able to see like the hair tie and everything behind it. So I'm just gonna leave that to your imagination, and I'm just gonna show you like parts of the shape. And I feel like when you start drawing stuff, you want to use that technique more often than not. Like realize that some things aren't gonna be seen, and that it's okay if it's behind another object. You know, just as long as like the viewer has enough information to understand what that object is, I feel like you can start putting objects behind other things and it'll turn out fine. So what I'm going to do now is kind of go in and play around with like the eyelashes. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and finish this other hand just by like blocking in. Let me turn my pencil weight up again. Okay. It's not perfect, but it gets the job done. There we go. Some ugly hands, my God. But that's okay. Once again, like if it's just something that's like not to your liking, you can always just go back and, kind of like edit it around, erase it. But this just gives you the general idea of where things are going to go. You want her hands to kind of like fall around where her hips are going to be for the most part. Her arms actually might be a little long for her body. And that's like one of the things I was talking about. Like when you're too zoomed in for too long, it's going to look a little weird. Like for example, like I think this arm might be a little bit long, so I'm going to go in. I'm going to erase it a little bit, shorten it. Boop. And then I'll just clean it up. Okay, and I'll go ahead and do the same thing for this hand as well to kind of keep things about even. Okay. So you want to make sure her hands are capable of falling by her sides. Once you've established that, one thing I didn't talk about is like drawing the rest of the chest, which I can talk about right now actually. Now that you have like the armpits and everything established, what I like to do is I'll go in, I'll figure out where the collarbone is by drawing this little like V in the center of it. I'll go in and I will draw another rhombus. Once I have that established, what you can do is just draw another rhombus. See how having like two rhombuses like this makes it almost like a 3D blocky shape? Like it should give you like, I don't know, like PlayStation Tomb Raider like vibes from like 2001 or something with just like blocky boobs. Like you can do that to kind of give you an idea of where things are going to be. And then what I was talking about earlier by like making things curvy, I'll go back in and draw these like curves on the sides. Kind of fill them in afterwards. Kind of round out my shapes. I won't say they're like circles necessarily because breasts have weight. Essentially, gravity is dragging everything on our bodies down. And you want that to be emphasized to a degree when you're drawing certain features on a body. So I'll go back in and I'll erase these things. That way you guys can see. They're not necessarily circles, they're kind of like, almost like ovals really. Just to kind of show like the weight of each object. So it's going to look kind of like this. And then underneath here are basically where the ribs are going to be. Essentially, like you don't have to draw those in, but just to show you, like these are essentially where the ribs would be. And you can go a little bit above like where the waistline is and draw a line right there because that essentially is where the belly button would be. You could even say like this is where like the hips would start as well, just for reference. So you got your ribs up here, or actually they would come a little bit lower. Your ribs, like right around here in this area. You got your hips right around this area, and everything in between is like the stomach and the torso. Essentially, yeah, you have this is how you draw the figure. For the toes, basically you want to have it to where it is you want to go bigger to smaller. And toes like to kind of like curl towards the ends. So it's like I have the big toe, I have the smaller toes, and then I have to like mentally count, make sure I'm drawing like 5 toes. So your big toe is probably going to be your biggest, of course. And then the smaller toes kind of just like follow suit. Now you have like toes established. You basically have your fingers established. You can go back in. The only way you can really get better with like fingers is by practicing. They're essentially just cylinder shapes. Like once you have like the general idea of where you want the hands to be, you can go in and kind of just like correct the things that aren't accurate. So all I did was basically I made cylinders in my mind of where I want things to be. And then I filled it in that way. And if I feel like it's just not correct, then I'll just go back in later and kind of like actually it's also really good to look at references. I know a lot of people have a stigma against it, but I feel like references save lives. Like they're just as useful as anything else. They're another tool in your arsenal for art. And you can just do the same treatment to the other hand as well. And let's say I'm gonna actually put some clothes on our person right here. Okay. Oh, that's not right. There you go. Okay.